Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the November 18th meeting of the Santa Barbara Harbor Commission. Ms. Rodriguez, would you please conduct a roll call for us?
We can't hear you, Angela.
Oh, sorry about that. Commissioner Kramer?
Here.
All right, are you able to turn your webcam on?
It's on.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Commissioner Sly?
Here.
Commissioner Sloan?
Here.
Commissioner Stanowik?
Here.
Commissioner Stedman?
Here.
Chair McCray?
Here,
All right, everybody's here. Thank you.
thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
Hello, commissioners. No changes to the agenda, Chair McCray. Thank you.
Thank you. And next I'll turn to general public comment. If anybody has a comment on any item that is not, on anything that's not already on the agenda for this evening, we'd be glad to hear it at this time.
At this time, I don't see any hands raised, but I do want to remind the public that if they would like to speak, they can indicate that by using the raise and lower their hand icon on the control panel. And once I see the hand raised, I will notify them when it's their turn to speak, and they will have 2 minutes. And I still don't see any hands raised at the moment.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So that moves us to the consent calendar this evening. And we have one item there, the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. The recommendation is that we waive further reading and approve the minutes. Do
So
we have
moved.
a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
I'll second.
And so I'll turn to Ms. Rodriguez for a roll call vote.
All right. Commissioner Kramer?
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Sly?
Yes.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Stanowik?
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman?
Yes.
And Chair McCray?
Aye.
All right, unanimous, thank you.
Thank you. And so that brings us to the director's report. And I believe I'll turn to Mr. Mike Wiltshire for that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair McCray. Good evening, Harbor Commissioners, and anyone who's tuned in. Again, I'm Mike Wiltshire, Waterfront Director. So yeah, I don't want to jinx it, but seem to have a fairly efficient meeting tonight. I'll get into mine. A reminder, so this is our last Harbor Commission meeting of 2021. So we're canceling the December meeting for the holidays. So our next time we meet will be January 20th, 2022. Next slide, Angela. All right, so being our last meeting of the year, I wanted to try doing this and see if it's something the Harbor Commission appreciates. I just wanted to do kind of a quick recap on some of the standout items and issues that the Harbor Commission reviewed. I always think it's kind of a good thing to sort of recap and look at what we've done over the year. Sometimes it gets forgotten and lost in the fray, but it's nice to kind of go back and see what we've done. So first on the list is some administrative items. So we did get a new Harbor Commissioner. So Commissioner Adam Stanowik started his term on January 2021. So thus far, in my opinion, been a great addition. So Adam's a slip holder and a live aboard in the harbor and kind of very vested and really a great addition in my opinion. So Commissioner Stanowik, thanks and congrats on making it through your first year. Hope we can all meet in person sometime. So
For sure.
and with the new coming in, we also have 2 Harbor Commissioners resigning. So Jim Sloan and Lang Sly, last meeting. So certainly bittersweet on our end, but yeah, I know we thanked you guys last meeting, but really can't thank you enough for what you put into the commission and really the waterfront. So your tenure and your experience and your input will be missed. One other kind of administrative item that I wanted to touch on, another big effort in this past year, was the adoption of the city's sea level rise adaptation plan. So I know this was kind of a bigger and much wider city effort, but Harbor Commission was very involved. Specifically, I want to call out Commissioner Sloan and Commissioner Kramer, who represented the Harbor Commission and the waterfront's interests as members of the Sea Level Rise Subcommittee. This was a really big lift for the city and for us, the Waterfront and Harbor Commission, obviously very impacted. So this sea level rise adaptation plan now exists. It's in place. It's been accepted by council, and it really kind of acts as our first step towards planning for sea level rise. It's kind of a tool that we can build on. So thanks to the Harbor Commission and specifically Commissioner Sloan and Kramer for the time you put into that. And I'm certain there's going to be kind of more work in this arena going forward for the Harbor Commission. Next slide. So with respect to facilities and our infrastructure, just wanted to touch on a couple of facilities things really quick. So at the start of the year, the Harbor Commission was involved and very aware of our underground storage tank project. I highlight this one because it was really kind of front and center and had some pretty big impacts to our tenants. So it was a really big project on our end and for our tenants' end, and it's kind of nice to have this one in the rear view, but it was kind of a long time coming. Another big item was the B-Cycle bicycle share program. So Harbor Commission yourselves provided a lot of significant input on this pilot program and really helped shape the way that it rolled out. So this program is now underway, and there's several bike stations and bikes down located in the waterfront. From the initial reports from the program's been really successful. So lots of folks are using these bikes. They have all the data on sort of mileage and where they've been checked out. I did hear from the operator that one of the docking stations, so the one down by Marina 2, is in the top 5 most utilized stations in the city. And so from a usage point of view, that's kind of neat to hear. It's pretty well received and well used by the folks down here. Next slide. All right, and so now to recap on some of our business service items in the last year. So this we do a fair amount of stuff in the business realm. So we looked at and completed 7 lease renewals. Harbor Commission did 4 license agreement renewals, 2 completely new leases, which is somewhat rare for down here. And those were kind of prompted by 2 requests for proposal processes. So one was the larger one, the Sea Landing request for proposal. It's still kind of in progress and wrapping up now. And then if you remember, there was that smaller RFP for the small office space that went to Celebration Cruises. And additionally, we recently looked at 1 lease amendment or lease split, kind of Chomp and Salty splitting that lease into 2 leases. In addition to lease stuff, so another huge effort on our end, and Harbor Commission was aware and involved, was our deferred rent program. So because of COVID, the city really enacted that temporary eviction moratorium ordinance. We were not immune to that. So as a result, the waterfront deferred about $1.5 million in rents. 19 of our 61 tenants took us up on deferring rents. And so that's been a big part of our year this year, is kind of managing those revenues and tracking with our tenants as to where they are with that deferred rent payback. I think it really is a success story. So we've worked with our tenants, and to date, roughly 1.2 of that $1.5 million in deferred rents has been paid back. Really do think that's a tremendous success. The money that is still outstanding, most of those tenants have indicated that they intend to pay that back by the end of the year. So there's a very likely chance that we'll see the lion's share of that deferred rent back by the end of this year. Additionally, on a business services side, so we, as Harbor Commission, approved and forwarded our 2022-23 budget to council. So that was kind of a big lift. That's a 2-year budget cycle, which is a lot goes into that. So as usual, it was a long and involved process to go, involve the budget subcommittee, Harbor Commission, and ultimately council. And so then that's kind of our guiding financial plan for not only this fiscal year 22, but 23 as well. And pretty soon we'll be gearing up to go through the process again with our FY 23, which is what is called a mid-cycle budget. And so we do our budgets in 2-year blocks. And so we'll still review our 23 budget coming up at the end of the year and the new year. So that'll come back to the Harbor Commission to kind of tweak and make any changes necessary to our 23 portion of that budget. I'm going to move on to harbor operations, but just wanted to see if there are any questions or comments thus far on what I've talked about. All right, hearing none. Angela, next slide. All right, so from a harbor operations and policy point of view, we had a busy year as well. So one of the biggest efforts, which is still ongoing, was the slip assignment policy subcommittee. And so this committee was formed by the Harbor Commission really to address questions and concerns with slip policy and the slip transfer fee specifically. So that subcommittee's met several times over the last year and really done some good work in my opinion, and has reported back to the full commission a number of times. I believe we're due for another subcommittee meeting to kind of finalize and move forward with some of the work and the decisions that were made by that subcommittee and the full Harbor Commission. So although their work's not complete, that was a really busy year for that subcommittee. And I think a really deep dive into our slip assignment policy and transfer fees. In addition to that, we also successfully conducted a lottery of 2 20-foot slips. I think it was the first virtual lottery. So thanks to Commissioner Sly, he was chair at the time, who kind of led that charge. I think we kind of came up with a pretty ingenious and intuitive way to do that as well. It'll probably stand the test of time and be used going forward. So that was nice, and the outcome was nice. And so we successfully lotteried off 2 20-foot slips, which is always kind of fun. And then Harbor Commission did provide input and recommendation regarding the waiving of fees of the Chumash Tomoe canoe. So this item received a lot of attention. Politically, it ultimately went to council. So I think the way we handled it was very, very well done. I mean, we kind of analyzed the situation, worked with council, and so we ultimately agreed to waive fees for the storage of the Chumash Tomoe canoe at West Beach. Next slide. And to wrap up, a couple other harbor operation-based items. So the Harbor Commission handled a slip termination, which is admittedly pretty rare for the Harbor Commission to go through. The Commission ultimately took final action after deliberating and discussing this, and took action on a slip termination. We received a couple presentations from some outside agencies. So back early in the year, we received a presentation from the County Air Pollution Control District on their grant programs and basically how they regulate marine engines. We also received a presentation from the State Lands Commission. And then most recently, we received a really in-depth and seemingly well-received presentation from Harbor Patrol, kind of outlining their operations and really taking a deep dive behind the scenes into things and what they do. So I know that wasn't completely comprehensive, but I just wanted to highlight a few of the big items. That brings me to the end of this part of my discussion, but is there anything I missed or anything anyone wants to add?
I have a comment. The California Air Resources Board is actually meeting tomorrow to discuss those very issues that were presented to us back a few meetings back. So if anybody's interested in listening in or taking part or providing comment, it's there. It starts at, I believe, 9 a.m. and you'll have to go to their website. It takes a little bit of digging to find the link, but it's there. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, Chair McCray. And I believe yesterday or the day before, I sent out a link kind of alluding to that and to a link to their meeting site. So absolutely, if anybody is interested in that, it does impact some of our tenants here. our charter boats and fishing charters, whale watching. It really has some impacts on their boats and what they need to do with those boats. And so, yeah, whatever decisions are made there will have impacts on our tenants. All right, next slide. All right, and so as usual, I like to cover a little list of tentative items or things that we kind of plan to get to in the coming months. With a new year coming, along with the possibility of 1 or 2 new harbor commissioners, we'll really have a busy year going forward. So in January, we'll likely handle a number of administrative items. So welcoming any new harbor commissioners, commission and committee assignments. I'll try and put together sort of a rough calendar and outline of items that we kind of can slot and move around and look what we have for the year to come. After seeing how well received the Harbor Patrol kind of deep dive was, I'd really like to do that for the entire waterfront department and kind of work through the divisions just so we have an understanding of what each division does, what the waterfront does. It's kind of a nice time, especially with some new harbor commissioners coming on board. I think it would be good to kind of mix those in throughout the year as we have time and there's slots for it. And then there's a few items that have been kind of hanging on the back burner that we'll aim to get to in the new year. So a review of the existing leases and the RFP process in general. We'd really like to see CFSB provide an update on their efforts with the Maritime Collective. I know there's a lot of good work going on behind the scenes there. And the Harbor Commission was involved pretty early on. So it'd be nice to get them back to kind of give an update on where that's all gone and where it's going. Municipal code updates, and of course the insurance requirement for vessels in the harbor. Those are all things we'd like to kind of tackle and start talking about in the year to come. So that's the end of my bit. I'm happy to take any questions before turning it over to Mr. Bossy for his business services update.
I have one comment, just going back to the deferred rent program, which at the time we did it, I thought was the right thing to do and would help our space tenants through a very, very difficult time. But I thought there would be some charge-offs because it was really tough for everybody. And I thought there would be some businesses who didn't make it or wouldn't be able to pay that back. And it seems like we've been repaid about almost 80% of what was deferred, that it worked really well. And I think it just says something really good about the mix of tenants we have, that they've worked hard and paid this money back, and a program that seems to have worked really well. And I'm really, really pleased to see the performance on it.
Any further questions and comments? Thank you very much, Lang. That was a great comment. Seeing none, that moves us on to the business services report and Mr. Brian Bossy.
Good evening, commissioners. Happy to see all of you this month for our last meeting of the year. Today's business services report is rather brief, but some important information in there. Next slide, Angela, please. Thank you. So, as is customary this time of year, for the 12th consecutive year, the Waterfront Department is working with the Stearns Wharf Business Association to bring a 25-foot white fir Christmas tree to the shoreward finger of Stearns Wharf. You can see it there on the left and more of a distant shot there on the right. The Stearns Wharf Business Association is generously paying for the Christmas tree to the tune of about $6,000. And the tree will be delivered on Monday, November the 29th. And the waterfront staff, our facility staff, will coordinate the installation, the lighting, and the decorations for the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree will be up through the new year. It's scheduled to be taken down that first week of January. Next slide, please. Next up is just a notice to the public and everybody out there that the waterfront's annual parking permits will go on sale Wednesday, December the 1st. This year's permit was a collaborative design that was done by Cesar Barrios, our parking supervisor, James Hatzidakis, our parking coordinator, as well as Allison Gruby, who is the city's graphic designer. If you're wondering, that is what is this? A two-spot octopus, California two-spot octopus. So it is native to the area. We didn't want to put something in there from the East Coast, so we made sure we put something cool in there that's found locally here in our waters. Now, the permits are valid from December 1st of 2021 through December 31st of 2022. So that's, if you act on it quick, you get 13 months out of that permit, which is an amazing deal. And due to COVID and the continued concerns surrounding COVID, we are strongly encouraging the public to purchase their general annual permits online. And I'll get into that in a second. Next slide, please. So for our general waterfront parking permits, these are the red permits. We are primarily looking at an online sale that's available through the department's website. So that'll be listed on our website. We're also posting notices throughout the harbor that has a QR code that you can click on your phone. It immediately pulls you up to the site. You can do your transaction while you're walking around the harbor. So there are two delivery options to select from: will call or mail. Will call, you will be able to pick up your permit the next day at the office. And then the mail option will be, what'll happen is we'll process that and we'll put it in the mail within 24 hours. You should give it about 3 to 5 business days for delivery in Santa Barbara County. But for both options, immediately after your online purchase, customers will receive a temporary parking permit via email. So that'll be sent to your email. You can print that out, and it's good for up to 5 days of parking in all of our valid lots. Again, permits will be sold in person. That's kind of our last resort, but we'd really appreciate if people took us up on the online option. Last year was the first year we did it, obviously due to COVID, and it worked out great. So it's very efficient. So again, encourage folks to purchase that online. Next slide, please. So for our slip permittee waterfront annual parking permit, few changes, a little bit different. First change is we have a new price. It's $125. That's the same price as our general permit. So that was done through our budget process and was put into our fee resolution, a number of public meetings where we discussed that in detail. Our slip permittee permits will be sold via the phone. That's probably the easiest way to do it for everybody, and that you can do that Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. And again, you have the same pickup options as you do for the general permit. It's available for pickup at the office or via will call, or if requested, we can mail that to you. And again, same deal, immediately after the sale is processed, the slip permittee will receive a temporary parking permit via email, and that's good for 5 days in all of our waterfront parking lots, except Stearns Wharf. So with that, that concludes the business services report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Bossi. Do we have any questions for Mr. Bossi? Yes, Ms. Kramer.
Yeah, I don't have a question, Brian, but that's a great design, and congratulate the designers.
I will do that. Thank you very much.
All right, okay.
Love those spots. All righty, so I think that brings us to the facilities management report of Mr. Brian Adair.
Hello, Harbor Commissioners. This is Brian Adair, Waterfront Facilities Manager. The Waterfront has partnered with the City of Santa Barbara Public Works Planning Department to utilize their knowledge and skill sets for permit planning, permit applications, consulting resources, and their established relationship with regulatory agencies. Tonight, I've invited Beth Anna Cornett from the Public Works Department. She's a project planner to give us an awareness presentation on 2 permit renewal applications. Beth Anna, are you with us?
I'm here. Can I be heard?
Leave
Hello,
that
Commissioner.
not clear.
Hi, I'm Beth Anna Cornett. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief high-level outline. I have about a 25-page presentation, lots of images, so hopefully it won't take too long. But basically, we want to describe what does this. We have permits that we're renewing for the sediment management plan, and I didn't know how familiar you guys were with the plan itself, so I wanted to go over what the plan allows the city to do, and that meaning the waterfront, the Parks and Recreation, and any other department of the city of Santa Barbara. And then there's two permits that we're renewing currently. One is called the Coastal Development Permit with the California Coastal Commission, and one is an individual permit with Army Corps of Engineers. Next slide, please. So one of the items is the placement of lifeguard towers. We do this. We place them out in the beaches I believe in the spring, and then we remove them in the fall and put them in storage. So we cannot place the towers without this permit in hand. Next slide, please. We also build beach berms. There's a storm berm that's built in front of at Ledbetter Beach in front of the Yacht Club, and this is a picture of the Yacht Club. I believe it was an El Nino year, and I believe it was '96, but someone will correct me if I'm wrong. But this is what happened when we didn't have a berm built in front of the Yacht Club. And so as you can see in this figure to the left, there's a berm. It's about 6 feet high, about 290 feet long, and about 20 feet wide, that's built in front of the Yacht Club to help protect it from ocean influence. Next slide, please. We also build a berm, and it's kind of difficult to see, but the berm is in this figure. This is an engineer's drawing of the berm at the mouth of Mission Creek, and it actually protects the water coming from Mission Creek that would erode underneath the wharf. And so what the berm does here is it creates this lagoon. It helps support and create this lagoon which protects tidewater goby, which happen to be inhabitants here. And so it's a very sensitive habitat that we have going on here. And so we're protecting not only the harbor from the influences of the creek, but the wharf and the water, the ocean's influence of the brackish water there. So next slide, please. We're also proposing to put a new berm in front of the Cabrillo Pavilion. It'll be about 150 feet long, same height of about 6 feet high, and about 15 to 20 feet in depth. And the idea here is we would only build it in the event of a very, like a severe storm surge or storm event coming and knowledge of a severe event. So it would be more of an intermittent berm. The two prior berms that I've listed, those are actually built annually and then deconstructed annually. Please proceed. Next slide. And then we also we've been building a berm for the 4th of July events, the 4th of July and the Parade of Lights fireworks displays. Those have been being built on West Beach, and we actually need an event berm. We need a permit to cover those. We've been getting a permit from the city, but it's actually Coastal Commission's jurisdiction. So we're going to be including that in our application, and they're very open to this comprehensive approach. Next slide, please. And we also use this permit to grade to dredge the non-federal channel. So as you can see in this very small image here on the right, there's the federal channel is illustrated with the blue, and the non-federal channel is all of the portions of West Beach, the harbor itself, and on the breakwater. So any of the sand that gets brought into the harbor through the onshore drift, that would be dredged out using this particular permit. Not the federal one is done biannual by the Army Corps of Engineers. So this is a kind of a complementary dredging activity that is not done annually. It's done as needed. Next slide, please. And then there's also what we have in this set of material that's submitted to the Coastal Commission will be the ideal contours of each beach and the depths of those beaches. And so this illustration here is for West Beach and the depths of the channel as you kind of come in. As you can see on the left-hand side, it's kind of hard to see the topography, but you can see that it's really irregular. And so what we do is the engineers have identified a way to, if you smooth out or regulate that topography, it creates a more calm channel for the smaller craft to use the channel. So that we have these ideal contours, not only for West Beach, East Beach, Ledbetter Beach, and the harbor. I didn't include every single illustration because it's a lot of detail that's kind of hard to see. So I just wanted to kind of give you a comprehensive overview. And if there's anything that you'd like to stop and ask questions about, I'm happy to pause or, let you ask questions, or we can just do questions at the end, whatever makes sense for you guys. So next slide. So this is another example of the ideal contours. As you can see on the right, you can see how they're even contours versus the more just kind of tight contours on the left-hand side, and then they're very large as you go down towards the ocean. So it's just showing a more sloped approach to cutting into the ocean. And then you have the cross sections below. And this is for this is actually, you can kind of see the berm that's being built in front of the Mission Canyon mouth there on the right-hand side. It looks like kind of a little appendage sticking out in front of the channel and then protecting the wharf. Next slide, please. So we also, under this permit, are allowed to do beach grooming. That's usually done by Parks and Recreation to remove any debris that comes in the winter months. And so we do seasonal, this is just done seasonally as needed. Next slide, please. We also, under this permit, have the ability to remove vessels that get washed ashore. We know that this has reduced quite a bit lately because of the mooring program, but we do still have that 1 or 2 vessels that get washed ashore. So that to mechanically get those off the beach, we need this permit in hand. Next slide, please. And then we also have about 5 storm drain outlets right adjacent to Cabrillo. These are kind of hard to see, but in the figure to the right, you can see these little indentations in the beach that kind of look like little holes that someone has dug. Those are actually storm drain outlets that are built to basically take the storm water and then get it out to the ocean without any filtration. So those are also permitted, the actual maintenance of those and digging those up and maintaining them and making sure they're functional. So it's important to our water quality of the city of Santa Barbara. Next slide, please. And then there's also kind of the final thing is the management of dead marine mammals. So we can actually mechanically bury a marine mammal using this permit instead of we wouldn't have the ability to have that machinery on the beach without this permit. And so some of the larger marine mammals we can't manage without mechanical equipment. So that's the idea behind this. And then next slide, please. So that we've been in this process, so there's a 10-year renewal process. Our permit that we had in hand was issued back in 2010. It expired in March of 2021 on the 13th, I think it was the 13th of March. But before it expired, we applied to the Coastal Commission and we asked, because of sea level rise, the analysis going on, because of some staffing issues, we said, hey, and COVID, we said, hey, can we please have an extension for 5 years of the existing permit? Because we knew we weren't going to have time to put together all the material necessary for the real 10-year permit. So they said no. They said that we got a letter back from the Coastal Commission in March of 2021 saying, no, sorry, you can't have a new 10-year permit. You need a new application. So they assigned us a new application number, which is this 421-103. So that's the permit that we're kind of currently working towards. Then we responded to their incomplete letter, gave them quite a number of material, lots of material that they asked for, a new biological resources report, much material. Then we got another incomplete letter in June, requesting mission annual reports for biological and water quality studies that were supposed to have been done for the last 10 years. So they want proof that we did everything that our conditions of approval say that we're going to do to basically get the next permit. And I have to say, we didn't necessarily do everything that was needed. So we're giving them everything that we can, and we plan to resubmit in December, which is next month. So we're in this process of working with the Coastal Commission to renew the permit. And this map here is a really nice overview of the whole permit of what does the permit entail. It goes all the way from Ledbetter Beach all the way on the south side, or I guess northwest side, and then includes all of the harbor, the wharf, all of East Beach, all the way to the Andrea Clark Bird Refuge and the Clark Estate. So it's a big area of the city of Santa Barbara, and it's pretty much analogous to the waterfront authority for the city of Santa Barbara. Next slide, please. And does anyone have questions? I know this is a lot of material. I just want to.
Yes.
Commissioner Mike Nelson.
I'm curious, the fact that you had to apply for a new permit, will it create delays that could set projects back in terms of projects that we need the permit for? The fact that we've got to go through the entire Coastal Commission and all of their reviews, is that causing any time problems for us?
What we've decided to do is so our permit conditions currently state, and we're going to get into the conditions, but the conditions say things like, before you do a grading of the beach or build a berm, you're going to do a biological resources study. So when we need to do the fireworks and 4th of July, we didn't have the permit. So we did the biological resources study in advance, and we're going to give that when I do my application in December. I'm giving that July, which is between when it's a non-permitted season, let's say, but I'm going to give them everything. I'm going to comply with their conditions, even though we don't have an active permit. It's not going to slow anything else down. So we rolled out the lifeguard towers. We've been doing beach grooming. We're going to build berms for the winter months. We tried our very best to get a 5-year extension in a good faith effort. So I hope that answers your question. And other projects aren't contingent upon this.
Can they object to the way you're moving forward with this, where you're sort of doing as we do the work, we're doing the biological analysis? Can they?
Well, we're in compliance with the permit conditions.
Got it.
So
okay.
We believe that we're in good standing as long as we stay in compliance with the permit conditions and adhere to those in this kind of gray area time frame. I think we'll be fine. I think the lesson learned here is to start early. So like maybe with a 10-year permit, maybe we start a year ahead, planning to get the right staff on board, get the right people in line, so yeah, I hope that answers your question.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, so we're building a berm right now, right, Beth Anna?
Are we building a berm right now?
This is Brian Adair. Yes, we started building berms this week, and we're actually completed. This is what's needed in preparation for storms that come unannounced. We don't get much warning, so we want to protect our resources. So we've completed that task. Thank you.
So
Okay.
There you go, Commissioner Nelson. Progress has not been halted.
No,
Great news.
yeah. we are managing the city the best of our ability. So we're managing the permit to the best of our ability. So the jurisdiction that coastal zone has is illustrated here over the project area, that pink area, everything in the pink, like shaded area, which says coastal commission, is their ability to issue a permit. The inland portions we have a local coastal plan that allows for that, but that's why we have to go to the coastal commission for this permit. We just don't have the local authority over this portion of the city. Next slide, please. So this is kind of a laundry list of everything I went over already, and kind of basically like placement of the lifeguard towers, building of the storm drains, berms, clearing of the non-federal channel, the grading of the sand, and other things. And so basically we're working collaboratively. I'm with Public Works. I'm working with Brian and with Mike and with Eric on this. So, and my boss is actually on this call as well. So she's been around the city her name is Sarah Isa. She's been around for about 7 years this round, and previously was with the city. So it takes a team for this kind of a project. So next slide, please. So the biological resources of concern from the perspective of the Coastal Commission in the existing coastal development permit that's expired are these. So, and we don't anticipate any changes because there really hasn't been some new species that's been discovered. So it's the California grunion, least tern, snowy plover, steelhead trout, and tidewater goby. And these are just images of the grunion, and I believe it's the least tern, or actually the snowy plover. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What protective measures are being done? This is the first I've heard of this, at least.
Yes, so the protective survey before we do grading or building of a berm or night surveys or different kinds of surveys that are done by a hired consultant. And so the city has been using Cardno Incorporated to do these surveys. And they're usually done, these surveys are actually usually done by the Parks and Recreation Department and managed by that department, because they're doing a lot of the work on the beaches. The berms themselves are being done and managed by Brian Adair's group. So they're sort of like, this permit covers the whole city property, but different entities within the city get to use the permit and have to comply with the conditions of the permit. I hope that answers your question.
Not really, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, let's go to the next slide because I think we can get into it a little bit more. So this is kind of an interesting, this is an annual calendar of all the different activities. And it basically, I know it's not legible, but it's basically everything that we do on the beach or in the harbor or in these different situations and the different kinds of work. And then it has a little number indicating, does this activity require a biological survey, and in what months? So like to do work in the plover territory, like the plover is the first line, it's got a 1. So it means there's a required biological survey in advance of all work. So this is kind of the measles chart descriptor of when do you need to work. So when Brian is scheduling his construction crew to go out and build a berm in November, he's going to consult this list and say, I need a plover survey, I need a steelhead, I need to look at steelhead, I need to look at goby, I need to look at whatever species are indicated for that kind of work. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Next
I'm hoping
slide,
that
please.
one thing, I'm hoping that this presentation can be posted online. I think it'd be really, really helpful for the public as well as us to be able to study it.
Okay. I don't know where we would post it, but I can consult with Mike and ask how he would want to handle that. If we can put it as a link under the Harbor Commission.
Right.
Yeah,
Sort of
Commissioner-
staff report section.
Commissioner Kramer, we'll post it on the Harbor Commission website under the meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of the data that our consultant has collected between 2013 and 2021. So as you can see, there was a couple of years where we don't have data, and the commission's asking for that data for 2010 and 11 and 12. We don't have it. So we're just saying, look, this is what we have. It's the best that we can do. And they've accepted it at this point, because every city, every county, every entity doesn't have perfect data. So we just try to do the best we can on this. So, and as you can see, we do have plover in our habitats. So next slide, please. So we also are working on an individual Army Corps permit, and this allows for comprehensive dredging and sediment disposal and the beach contouring. So there's kind of a geographic overlap between what you can do within the coastal zone and the Coastal Commission's authority, and where the Army Corps of Engineers has authority over the movement of sediment and sands and contouring of the beach. And so they basically allowed for an annual dredge of up to 500,000 cubic yards per year. We're actually working right now on the renewal. This one is not expired. It expires next year, but we've been working since basically last March. We got a consultant to update some of our biological resources studies so that we could apply for this. We have to do a sampling and analysis plan for this. So we've had to do quite a bit of work to support our renewal. And so we feel like we're going to be able to basically proceed with our renewal application in advance of expiration, which is the position we want to be in for these types of permits. Next slide, please. And this is some protective measures associated with our federal permit. So there's a protection for least tern, California steelhead, western snowy plover, tidewater goby, and also California grunion. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of overlap between the species of concern for both permits. Next slide, please. And then these are some of the technical studies that we've prepared to date. So we've done a sampling and analysis plan for the Army Corps permit. We've had to do an updated biological technical study. We've also had to do biological monitoring and reporting during construction for all phases of projects as they go forward, and then also water quality monitoring. Next slide, please. I think that's it. So do you have any questions, commissioners?
Yeah, I have a question. Beth, I mean, is it favorable for anybody on staff? Is it favorable that one of our council members is now on the Coastal Commission? Megan Harmon?
Yeah, Commissioner Stedman, TBD. I think it'll give us a good pipeline to communicate with them. We're totally to be determined. Haven't really established what her role is in relation to us, but yeah, I'm hoping it should be a nice way to communicate.
Right. Yeah, I would think that'd be, in our favor.
Who pays for all the studies?
That's the waterfront department mainly. For this sediment management permit, we cover the cost for that.
Is it expensive? I mean, it looked like a lot of technical studies that have a pretty substantial cost.
Yeah, it's not cheap. The saving grace is this thing only happens every 10 years, so it's a 10-year renewal. Yeah, it'll all in, it'll probably be to the tune of $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 once this is all said and done, and then you can kind of forget about it for 10 years, and it's just long enough for everyone to forget how to do it, and then we have to do it again.
Thank you.
Yeah. We did strategically try to ask for a longer term. They're not issuing longer terms, so.
And just for the commission and Beth Anna and your work group, I did want to really thank Public Works and Beth Anna and Sarah Isa and their group. They really did kind of help us out and bail us out in a tough time. So this 10-year permit, it goes long enough, and we were at kind of a unique time with some staffing shortages and holding positions vacant due to COVID. And so being able to use this resource that Public Works has, they're just such a knowledgeable group there. They really did sort of step up and help us in a huge way. We just didn't have the in-house expertise or staff to kind of work this through. So thank you to Sarah and Beth Anna.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you, Beth Anna, for the wonderful presentation, and it's our pleasure to assist the Waterfront Department. Thank you.
It looked like Commissioner Kramer had a question.
Yeah, it's not a question. I just want to say it's a really interesting report and very well presented, and thank you very much for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. And I think, I know this is extremely complicated. I think you gave just the right level of detail to enable us to understand it. And well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Brian Adair to answer Commissioner Kramer's question. For the, example, the beach berming building construction that we've been doing this week, we've had STORE Environmental out every morning to survey the beaches, to do an avian species survey to make sure that what we are doing on the beach doesn't disrupt the birds' habits, roosting, nesting. So that's an example of us complying with the requirements of the permit.
Thank you.
So this concludes facilities report. Thanks again to Beth Anna and Sarah Easy for really jumping in and helping us accomplish this task. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks for bringing in Beth Anna and to do that presentation. It was really, really helpful to have her input on it, being that she's the hands-on person, it appears. With that, I'd like to move us on to, let's see, where are we? I believe we're on to new business. No, we're not. Excuse me. We're on to the Harbor Operations Report with Eric Ingebretson.
Hey, Merritt, before we move on, I was just looking at the agenda, and there's another item under the Facilities Management Report. Something about the Corps of Engineers. Was that covered in her report, or is that a separate report?
Yeah, Commissioner, that was covered as a part of the report. There was kind of two sections of it.
Right, okay. I know we talked about that. We focused most on the Coastal Commission. So, okay, great.
Great, thank you. So let's hear from Mr. Ingebretson.
Good evening, Chair McCray and Harbor Commissioners. For the members of the public who don't know me, my name is Eric Ingebretson. I'm the Harbor Operations Manager. And with that, we'll start with the Harbor Operations Report. Next slide, please. So a quick update to slip waiting lists. Some members of the public have been asking questions. And so just a quick update, after several years of little movement of slips on the wait list, the Waterfront Department did have 3 that came available to the wait lists in 2021. Those slips that became available, 2 were 25-foot slips and 1 was a 28-foot slip. They were offered to individuals on the slip wait list after individuals on the master slip wait list and the submaster slip wait list declined those offers for smaller slips. To clarify, the master wait list contains 14 individuals who are waiting for specific size slips, and the submaster waiting list includes the same individuals and others ranked chronologically by their application date. The chart shows the breakdown of slip sizes that these individuals are waiting for on the master wait list, as well as their ranking on the submaster wait list. If a slip becomes available that is not represented on the master wait list, that slip permit will be offered to those ranked on the submaster list. Next slide, please. If all the individuals on the master and submaster list decline an offer for a slip permit assignment, that slip permit assignment will be offered to individuals on another list that's formed by the lottery draw. Thus the name lottery slip wait list. And this is not to be confused with the 20-foot special slip permit lottery that we had created back in March of 18, where we had a lottery for 2 20-foot slips, although there were 3 20-foot slips, but one person did take one off the list. Next slide, please. So just another update here. In the last 5 years, there have been 16 slips issued, part of which was due to the Marina One Finger expansion in 2017. This created 4 additional 35-foot slips. Additionally, of those 16-foot slips, 1 came from the master wait list, 5 came from the submaster wait list, 7 from the lottery list, and finally 2 from the special 20-foot lottery held last March that were accepted from that list. Next slide, please. So just for reference, this slide depicts the 25-foot and 28-foot slips in our harbor, with all 3 being recently assigned. I believe the 25 are in the red or coral colored area, and the 28-foot slips in the blue or blue slided area, shaded area. And as of now, all the slips permits have been assigned. And with that, if there aren't any questions, I'll continue on.
I have a
Do
question.
we have questions?
Yeah, I
Commissioner,
just have a
please.
question. Yeah, I'm just wondering about just joining the wait list. Can any member of the public join the lottery slip wait list right now? How does that
No,
work?
great question. Chair McCray, Commissioner Stanwyck. No, currently our threshold is when we get that number down to 20, and then we will open that up again. Eventually, the submaster and the master, those will be sunsetted out, at which time we'll only take off from the lottery slip list.
Okay, great. And then also, if somebody receives a slip from the wait list, now they're not paying the slip transfer fee. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Great question.
If nothing else, I'll continue.
Please do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So Harbor Patrol Supervisor retirement. Harbor Patrol Supervisor Monica Broman announced her retirement from the city of Santa Barbara effective December 31st. The Waterfront Department would love to keep her around for another 30 if we could. She's been an awesome asset to the department and the city of Santa Barbara. We've all genuinely enjoyed working with her, and she will certainly be missed. Please join us in wishing her the very best in her retirement. Next slide, please. As Officer Hubbard brought up on the activities report that he conducted last meeting, we do the Harbor Patrol blotter every now and then, and I thought it'd be a good time just to give you a recap of the last month. On October 28th, Officers Aldridge and crew member Davis responded on Patrol Boat 2 out offshore. We had a report from the Coast Guard of a vessel taking on water. The small fishing boat had apparently hit a whale while out in the shipping lane and was taking on water. They intercepted the boat around 2.5 miles offshore, 2 miles, and escorted the boat back into the harbor. The operator was able to remove the boat from the water and place it on a trailer, and they found a large hole in the hull just below the water line with what appeared to be skin or blubber from the whale itself. NOAA and Channel Islands Marine Protection were notified, and we haven't had any reports of any mammals deceased on the beach or at this time. October 29th, while on motor patrol at the launch ramp, Harbor Patrol Officer Rick Hubbard was waved down near Sea Landing by one of the charter fishing boat owners. She said that a man had reached out to her and reported that someone was trying to attack him with a hatchet. She brought him into the office, at which time he brandished a glass pipe and started acting erratically. She had the man leave the office. Hubbard followed the individual on foot. Ultimately, the individual jumped into the water. He was coaxed out by the police department, checked out by the AMR, and ultimately he was arrested for public intoxication. On the 29th of October, Harbor Patrol officers, excuse me, next slide, please. November 3rd, Harbor Patrol officers Martinez and Brower got a report of a 45-foot powerboat sinking in its slip. They responded and placed a total of 3 pumps on the boat and pumped out approximately 5,000 gallons of water from the vessel. The owner responded approximately 45 minutes later and took possession of his property. On November 4th, about 11 a.m., a citizen alerted city groundkeepers at Shoreline Park that a body appeared to be floating in the water below the cliffs. Santa Barbara Police Department, Harbor Patrol officers, and fire personnel arrived on scene, but due to the tide, they couldn't immediately respond. They ultimately, when the tide receded, they were able to retrieve the deceased and turn him over to the sheriff's coroner's office. Officer Sergeant Ethan Ragsdale from the police department reported that there were no obvious signs of foul play, and the cause of death is still being determined. And if there's nothing else, that concludes my report.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Ingebretson? Thank you very much, Eric.
Wait,
Oh, go ahead.
Question. Sorry about that. So with the retirement of Officer Broman, what's our staffing going to be at, Eric?
So, great question, Chair McCray, Commissioner Stedman. We are currently in the recruitment process for a supervisor and currently in a recruitment process for 2 Harbor Patrol officers. So 1 officer position is vacant. We are looking at the backfill with Lieutenant Broman leaving, and we have been okay to hire 2 Harbor Patrol officers, which are, we have 4 in background at this time.
Wow. Wow. Constant pressure.
Great question. Just want to thank Officer Broman for her 30 years of service. That's
Yes.
that's quite a stint. Congratulations to her.
Job well done.
Thank you.
Seeing nothing more from the commission, let's move on to new business. And I believe we'll be hearing from Mr. Brian Bossie on 2 items, which are both action items.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Yes, 2 actionable items for you this evening. The first is a proposed lease assignment regarding the Harbor Restaurant. Next slide, please. The Harbor Restaurant was originally opened in 1941 and has been a staple of Stearns Wharf ever since. In 1988, the lease was assigned to the current owner, Mr. John Scott. And then again in 1995, the lease was assigned to Long Harbor LLC, which is partially owned by Mr. John Scott. Next slide, please. There's an old photo for you on your left, and obviously, and a more recent photo on your right. So as you can tell, been there quite a long time, been in numerous movies and TV shows throughout the years. Next slide, please. So the proposed lease assignment. The assignment was requested by the existing owners, Long Harbor LLC, and they are proposing to assign that lease to Santa Barbara Harbor Restaurant, a California corporation. As with all of our lease assignments, there are no change to the existing terms. So the existing terms go with it. New owner is just takes those terms upon themselves. The proposed new owners are Mr. Gene Sanchez and Mr. Francisco Ibanez. Mr. Ibanez has 27 years in the restaurant business. He currently owns 4 restaurants, and he has 2 more restaurants which will be opening in the coming months. Mr. Sanchez has 30 years of experience in the seafood production, sales, import, export, and distribution industry. He works very closely with many, many restaurants, so he's very familiar with restaurants. And the 2 of them are excited to make the Harbor Restaurant the center of the waterfront and reestablish it as a local institution. They have submitted all the required materials as part of the lease assignment process. They both have a very good credit rating, and they have the financial resources to make this happen. Now, the concept for the new Harbor Restaurant is they really want to re-energize the facility, and they want to activate every space. As you all know, if you all have been out there, there are lots of nooks and crannies out there. It's an enormous restaurant, both downstairs at the harbor and upstairs at Longboards. They want to activate every space. They want to create a new and enhanced menu that features high quality seafood, local, fresh, and seasonal ingredients, new beverages, local craft beers, and cocktails. The food menu they're proposing, it will be categorized as New American Cuisine, and it's designed to attract a wider demographic and provide a multitude of culinary options for a diverse range of guests. Next slide, please. So existing terms of the lease, again, this is what the new owners would be assuming. Remaining term, they have 7 years on their remaining term, the initial term, I should say. And then they have 3 5-year options extending all the way out to December 31st of 2039. This is definitely one of our longer leases by far. The current base rent is just shy of $52,500 per month. There's also a percentage rent clause, 10% up to and including $3 million, and then it goes up to 11% beyond that. They also receive an annual rent adjustment, as do all of our tenants, related to the consumer price index. Next slide, please. So again, the owners are very excited. They have big plans for the space. They are going to phase in their improvements, 2 phases. The first phase will include the downstairs and will include an overall cleanup and refreshing of the building, the interior paint, trim, seating areas, new flooring, new lighting, new millwork, and new decor for the entire area, both downstairs as well as upstairs. Also included with the downstairs component is they'd like to add take this end space here on your left, that's the southmost facing space, the furthest out on the wharf, if you will. And they want to take that and transition that into a coffee and pastry shop. So high-end coffee, good pastries, open early in the morning. You're walking out on the wharf, grab a coffee, grab a pastry, as well as, you know, other tenants who out there, you can visit them as well. They also wanted to have a to-go window on the front where you enter off to the right. So to-go chowder, you're walking out, you don't necessarily want to sit down, but you want to take a cup of hot chowder with you out on the wharf. You can stop by and get a to-go option. They're also going to renovate the downstairs to include a new cocktail lounge as well as a completely new dining area. So off to the right are some of the renderings of the coffee and pastry shop, both the top and the bottom there. A little hard to see, but exciting nonetheless. Next slide, please. As far as their upstairs, which is currently longboards, they do have big plans for that as well. This will be phase 2 of the renovation. It includes a new rooftop patio and cocktail lounge. So they're going to completely redo the interior as well as the exterior. Both inside and outside will be individual seating, but also community seating. That's obviously a big thing in restaurants these days. They'll be refinishing the deck. They'll be putting up new shade covers. So gone will be the umbrellas. It'll be more in line with what we have over here at Chomp, more kind of that sail, that more artistic look. And so again, some detail over there on the right side of your screen as to what they want to do. Some of the best views, I think, of any restaurant. So the proposed new owners are very excited to get started. We are excited. They have big plans for this space. The current owner, Long Harbor LLC, is considered a tenant in good standing, which is one of the criteria as part of an assignment process. And they have no outstanding default notices on file. They did participate in the deferred rent program, and they paid that all off. So they are free and clear. And if the Harbor Commission recommends council approval of the assignment, it will be at council in early December. And I believe that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or do my best, I should say.
So before we get into questions, I'd like to point out that what we should be doing here is asking Brian questions, but not get into a whole lot of commission discussion just yet. We'll take public comment after the questions of Brian have been posed and answered. And then we'll have our opportunity to kind of discuss this more fully and see where we are on it. It sounds like a great proposal. Any questions for Brian?
Yeah. I have one. Brian, does this require any of these exterior work require HLC approval?
Chair McCray, Commissioner Kramer, we looked into that as part of the vetting process. The proposed new owners were curious as to what type of process they would have to undergo. I've just recently, actually yesterday, talked again with the city historian, and this is not HLC. This would be ADR. So they will have to go through a design review process, especially for any exterior change. And they will pay close attention, as this is obviously not in the legal terms, but if you will, just the common vernacular, it is a landmark for the city of Santa Barbara in that sense. It's an icon of the community, and it's been around for a long, long time. So they will pay careful attention to any changes that are proposed out there.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson.
Given this is great. I mean, we're still coming out of a recovery, and to have seasoned, sophisticated operators like this, we're fortunate that Mr. Scott's recruitment efforts were so successful. I have a general question about the leasing program. When you have, I mean, this has been 30 plus years, and will go to 40 years. Is there any requirement placed upon the waterfront department to achieve market value as part of your due diligence at any step of the way? The original lease, the extensions, the assignments, or no? I mean, it's basically the negotiation between Mr. Scott and Mr. Sanchez and Ibanez that determines what the value is? Is that the way it works?
Chair McCray, Commissioner Nelson, when you define value, are you talking the sale price or the lease rate, things like that? Sorry, just for clarification.
The actual value of the lease, the market value of the lease, because over 30 years, the value of that lease can change. And I'm wondering, is there a way when you're monitoring a 30 or 40-year lease where you kind of keep an eye on the actual value? And if so, how do you do that?
Right, no, great question. So as far as value of the lease, that and the purchase price, that's determined by the current owner and the proposed owner. So they work out their deal separately. We do get a copy of that. That's part of the process. So we do have that information. So that's just, I guess, restaurant capitalism, if you will, and they determine that value. Obviously, the longer a lease is, that helps with the price. However, things like sales data over the last, 5, 10, 15 years, what's going on there now, the condition of the space and all that goes into that whole process that those two parties negotiate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question is because, as Mike Wiltshire pointed out, John Stedman, John Sloan, and I spent a fair amount of time dealing with slip transfers. And I'm wondering, and the slip transfer fee at its heart is an acknowledgement of the fact that the tidelands, the submerged lands beneath that have a value. And the transfer fee is a way of representing the value of that. So you have to go through a slip transfer process for a permit, but you don't have to go through a lease transfer process that also acknowledges the submerged and tidelands. And I'm just curious how that happens. I noticed that in the document that there is a assignment review, you get $3,000 for the review, but as far as the actual assignment, there's no transfer fee. Correct?
Chair McCray, Commissioner Nelson, the fee is that $3,000, and that's about it. Yeah, and that's in all of our leases. That's an interesting point. I don't think we've ever thought about it like that. A little bit different in that, it's a slip and it generates the same slip fee 12 months a year until it goes up the next year. The idea with this is the hope, I guess, is that you get a tenant in there who will rejuvenate the space or is coming in with a lot of energy and finances to back them and picks their sales up. When their sales go up, our return via percentage rent and things like that come back to us. So, but yeah, that's a good point. We can look at that in the future as to how that could be handled.
We can look at it. I'm not raising any objections to this at all. I'm just saying that, we charge 50% of value for a permit, but when it comes to a giant lease, there's very little at all. It's just perplexing.
Yeah, Commissioner Nelson and Brian, just to hop in quick, it is a really good kind of concept and question. And the leases are a little bit different than the license agreements or just the permits, which are the slips. But when we met with State Lands Commission, we're obligated to kind of maximize those rental dollars. But when you negotiate a lease, it's sort of a long-term agreement. It comes with a lot more rights from the tenant and for ourselves. So that negotiated agreement, when it is negotiated, that's the time to sort of determine that market value and set it for the term of the lease. In this case, it's not really that. We're just transferring the exact existing lease. So we don't really have an opportunity to go in and remake all of the terms. This really is just a lease transfer.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'd like to step in here. There's a fundamental difference in that our slip rates are far beneath what the market value of the slip is. So that's what drives the additional value of just having the permit. And I don't believe that's the case with these leases. Not only aren't they a fixed set fee month to month, and set as a percentage so that everybody is kind of, everybody's interests are pretty much aligned. I don't think you'll see that latent extra value, the marginal value accrue to these larger leases the way you do with the slips, which are so, month to month, so much less expensive than what their true market value would be if you were just to let it ride.
But the application of the slip transfer fee also works as an economic deterrent to inheritance for those slips. Whereas we're not really trying to protect against that process with these lease agreements. Would that be fair to say? Right, we don't want our slips being passed on through inheritance, right? That would bar the general public an opportunity, to have a slip, right? So we apply a slip transfer fee, which is an economic governor, whereas these leases aren't governed the same way, right? I mean, Brian, these can stay in a family for a long time, right? These businesses. So
Sure, they can. I mean, this particular business has been in the Scott family since 1988. Part of this too is, and just to comment a little bit on that, is
sure.
this family holds this resource very near and dear to their heart. So this was not an easy decision for them. So when they went through this vetting process, and there were numerous suitors, when they went through this vetting process, their whole goal was to make sure that the next entity to come in and assume the ownership would take it to a next level. And it wasn't this is their name on that as they see it. So they very much had an enormous part in this effort, and talking with them, it was far more than a full-time job to them. This was not just a business decision. This was much more than that. So yeah, businesses can stay if they're in good standing and they work through the process and they come to the end of their lease and they're in good standing and they'd like to re-up again. They have the right, basically the first right of refusal to start a negotiation process with the city and then continue into a new lease agreement. If that negotiation process isn't fruitful, then we can then go out per city policy and do an RFP process. So yeah, it can technically stay in the same family's hands for many years. Madam Rosinka, another example, many, many years. Doesn't happen often, but it is a possibility.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do we have any other further questions from Mr. Bossy? All right, seeing none, is there any public comment?
At this time, I don't see any hands raised, but I would like to remind the public if they would like to speak on this item, they can indicate that by using the raise and lower your hand icon on the control panel. And I still do not see any. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Rodriguez. So we have an opportunity to recommend City Council approve the assignment of this lease agreement. I'd like to open it up to just general commenting between commissioners and see where we are with this. And seeing none, we'll just move right along and I'll see if there is a proposal out there.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
And so we have a motion and a second. There's an opportunity for further discussion if you'd like it, or we can, if there is none, we'll move right on into a roll call vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
All right, Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Sly,
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanowick,
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman,
Yes?
Commissioner Kramer,
Yes,
Chair McCray.
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have another proposed lease agreement. Mr. Bossy?
Yes, let me pull this up real quick. Okay, a number of you have been involved with this for many months. This process goes back to actually March and April of this year. And this is, we're getting closer to the final steps regarding a proposed lease agreement with Santa Barbara Landing LLC. Next slide, please. And please, I'm going to go through a number of these initial slides rather quickly because you've seen these not only at last month's meeting, but at the RFP subcommittee and probably some meetings in between there. So stop me if you have any questions as far as the background is concerned. So the site we're talking about is 301 West Cabrillo Boulevard. Here are a couple images that show the site from an aerial view. It consists of about 2,200 square feet of land and just about a half acre of water area. And this RFP was started, next slide please, back in, the date of issuance was July 1st of this year. And we had it out for 6 weeks. It went out to our 61 tenants first and foremost, and then went out to over 100 interested parties who over the years and months have expressed interest in possible lease space down here at the harbor. We received 4 proposals in the end, and we had a very thorough review process that you were all part of. We had a staff review, we had an RFP subcommittee review, and then Harbor Commission reviewed the proposals at last month's meeting. So next slide, please. So as far as the city staff review, we had our economic development manager, we had our airport business development manager, and our recreation programs manager review these review these proposals, the 4 proposals. All proposals met the basic parameters of the request for proposal process. All proposals were considered ocean dependent, and they all fit the local coastal plan and the Coastal Act guidelines. Next slide, please. At that city staff review, the team unanimously recommended Santa Barbara Landing LLC as the most responsive and responsible proposal. Next slide, please. From there, we took it to the Harbor Commission's RFP subcommittee meeting on the 23rd of September. The subcommittee received and reviewed all 4 proposals and similarly acknowledged the viability of all 4 proposals for the site. They discussed the proposals in detail and had a number of great questions for staff. Next slide, please. And that review team, the RFP subcommittee unanimously agreed that Santa Barbara Landing LLC was the most responsive as well. They're prepared for short and long-term success, and their local experience and their qualifications best correspond with the local coastal plan and the waterfront interests. Next slide, please. Last month, Mr. Wiltshire was kind enough to put this forward and handle this proposal, and the Harbor Commission unanimously agreed that Santa Barbara Landing LLC best met the needs of the Waterfront Department and the local coastal plan. The Harbor Commission directed staff to negotiate a lease agreement with Santa Barbara Landing LLC and come back to the commission with that proposed lease agreement. Next slide, please. So that brings us to today. We met numerous times over the last month with representatives of Santa Barbara Landing LLC. I believe we had 2 in-person meetings and then numerous conference calls sorting through the lease agreement. And what we are proposing to you today is as follows: the proposed lease terms. A 10-year term with 2 5-year options. a base rent of $120,000 per year. That's $10,000 per month. That would be seasonally adjusted. So in the lighter months, for this particular enterprise, your November, December, January, February, they would pay a smaller amount. In those shoulder seasons, a little bit more. And then in the summer season is where they would pay considerably more for the lease agreement, for their monthly lease. They're also subject to percentage rent, and that varies depending on activity. They have a whole lot of activities going on at this site. So that was, we took great pains to make sure that those percentages were on par with existing tenants in the harbor to create a level playing field. So for instance, SUP rentals would be the same as they are with our other SUP rental providers in the harbor. Their food service, not that that's not the main part of them. So we wanted to put them in line with other folks who are doing food service, which is not their main business per se. So we wanted to align those as well as kayak kayak rentals and things like that. So we really wanted to create an even playing field for everybody. And then obviously, similar to all of our tenants, they will get a cost of living increase, which currently is, usually that's over the last 5-10 years hasn't been a whole lot. It's currently at 5.6%. So that's a significant bump in rent. So those are the proposed lease terms. Next slide, please. I think one of the big things that really separated these folks from others were the proposed improvements and the amount of detail they went into, hiring an architect, getting renderings and things like that, cost estimates, so they knew exactly what they wanted to do and how much that would cost. So these folks have a real eye out for what they want to do there. They see the potential of 301 West Cabrillo Boulevard, which has really been woefully underperforming for quite some time. We're excited to see this new energy come to the space. They want to create an inviting space, open and bright, and expand the building. You can kind of see it in this, but they want to expand the building within the existing footprint. And all along we have said this should be the eastern part of the harbor's anchor. And we see this over the years. In our expectations are in a few years, we want this to be the top performing, or if not the top performing, second or third top performing tenant of all of our 61 tenants. Next slide, please. This is a rendering from the walkway there. So you can see they expanded out over the water. Again, in the existing footprint, they've got a space there right off the walkway, which is going to be a coffee and deli component. They're looking at a proposed agreement with a local coffee roaster, as well as a local deli to provide very high quality, good food. It's a great place to be. It'll serve West Beach as well as people walking out on the rock groin. And they're splitting this up into 3 phases. The first phase, they're going to spend the first year, obviously, doing design and permitting. That is our process. They would like to do immediate dock repairs and some visual enhancements, some signage and things like that, paint, and just kind of clean the overall area up. The second part will be the build out of the main building, electrical upgrades. They want to do a new electrical service that would just serve the docks. And then lastly on their list, phase 3 is some storage shed replacement out on the docks. Next slide, please. This is an interior shot of how they see the facility. Again, opening the area up, really bringing in a nautical theme. They want to have tackle. They want to have clothing. They want to have, if you're down there with your kid and you from somewhere else and forgot the kid sand toys, they want to have that available, boogie boards, that kind of stuff. So they really want to enhance the space. As you can see, this is their vision, and we're excited. I think you folks are all excited, and I know Santa Barbara Landing LLC is excited to hopefully continue to move through this process. So I believe next slide. Just kind of to wrap it all up, coastal land use plan, they are compliant. They are considered an ocean dependent use. And that was also presented as such as part of our 5-year review of uses in the harbor commercial zone. The proposed uses by Santa Barbara Landing LLC meet the waterfront's leasing priorities. Again, that ocean dependent, and they conform to the city's coastal plan. And with that, I will open it up to any questions you might have of staff.
Oh yeah, I have a question. Yeah, those are really cool photos that you showed of the interior space. That was kind of interesting. I was just kind of curious. Do we know the name of the coffee shop or deli that's moving in, or the timeline implementation that they're proposing?
I do know the names of both the coffee and the deli. I'm just not sure if I'm supposed to say, because I still think they're working on their agreement. They have a letter of understanding that they put together, which is great. This deli component, coffee component was in the last lease the entire 30 years, and it was never acted upon. And so the city has always kind of had that vision of this space providing that amongst their other duties, but really tapping into West Beach and people walking along Cabrillo Boulevard. So this could be a big thing for them. So I'd rather not say, but they're both local and they're both very good. You will be very happy with both of those. And then I'm sorry, your second question, Commissioner Stanley.
Oh yeah, just the time frame implementation of redesigning that space and having these these services come in there.
Sure. So as far as the construction and things like that, this first year they're going to use for design and permitting, and these are all conservative. They really want to push this. They want to get in there and make things happen. So the first year would be design, permitting. As you can see, they've already got kind of a head start on the design. And then the next year or so would be the construction. And we put in a little wiggle room in the lease. We have these listed out in the lease because we want to hold them to it. And so we've given them 1.5 years, 2 years to do the actual construction. And that was purely based on something weird like, I don't know, a worldwide pandemic happening and everything shutting down and not be able to do anything or find wood or whatever. So we wanted to give them a little leeway, but they want to get this done yesterday. And then that third and final phase, the sheds and things like that on the docks would come 1 year after that. So I think we gave them about 4 years, but they, again, want to do this yesterday. So that's as far as their build out is concerned. And then obviously they have to build that out to get that deli/coffee space. So that's going to come online a little later. So we do have measures in there, percent red measures in there for the concessionaire that does come in, and we stagger that. We start them off slowly and then give them about 2 years to get up to full speed, just to kind of get activated and comfortable with the space and kind of figure it all out, because it is going to be a new component out there. But I think in the end we'll be very, very successful.
Hey,
Sounds great.
Brian,
Thanks.
Brian, what are the penalties if they don't meet the development timeline?
It's actually an active default, lease default. Yeah. And free sandwiches and coffee for no, I'm just kidding. It's an active default.
You're gonna have a lot of new coffee places between there and the Harbor Restaurant.
You'll never slow down.
It's gonna be a well caffeinated community.
Exactly. Nothing better.
I have a question. During the review, the subcommittee review, and then the subsequent review by that, I asked about, can the lease include a reference or an emphasis on safety? I just can't get out of my mind the tragedy that occurred over there. And when I went through the lease this morning, I didn't see any specific reference to safety. I saw a specific reference to ordinances and laws and regulations, but there was, you broke out things like trash, you broke out things like lighting. And part of me says, in this case, in this instance, given what happened there, can't we make an emphasis on the safety requirements that these vendors must adhere to, and that it's an absolute imperative? And I appreciate what Jamie Dimon said, both at the subcommittee meeting as well as the Harbor Commission meeting. I believe her. But I would personally feel better if some reference in the lease could refer to the safety requirements associated with being that master tenant. But I don't want to slow it down. I really don't.
No, that's fine. And Chair McCray, Commissioner Nelson, just to repeat, and this probably won't satisfy you, but again, we have those, if you will, they are general, but they are all encompassing state, local, federal regulations and guidelines. The folks who are charged with safety, the Coast Guard and things like that, that's all part of that umbrella that we then make them adhere to. So I think, one worry with calling out particular safety issues is that we miss something. And then something happens and they focus on that. Well, you didn't say that in your lease agreement. So we're really trying to do these umbrella, overarching safety standards brought on by the feds, the state, and local officials as well. So I hope that gives you some level of comfort. I can guarantee you that, as you said, Ms. Diamond and her staff are very concerned with that. The existing boats have been modified significantly, safety measures over the past year that far exceed any current standard. So they are very much cognizant of that and understanding. They've all participated in, as we all have, the tragedies of 2019, and they don't want to go anywhere near that in the future, obviously.
Okay.
Do we have any further questions for Mr. Bossi? Seeing none, I'll turn to public comment. Ms. Rodriguez, do we have any commenters?
At this time, there isn't anyone in the crowd with their hand raised, but I can wait for a couple seconds to see if anyone does. And still none.
Very well. Is there further discussion amongst commissioners? Or a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
And a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there anybody who would like to say anything more on this before we take it to a roll call vote? Ms. Rodriguez?
Commissioner Sly,
Okay.
Commissioner Sloan,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanwyck,
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman,
A.
Commissioner Kramer,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Chair McCray.
Yes,
All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
thank you. Oh,
Good job, Brian.
good job here.
Thank you all for your assistance with that. I know that was a long process from April and May, but I appreciate all your input. Very good input. It will help inform us as we move forward in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. So that moves us to subcommittee reports. Are there any subcommittee reports? Seeing none. Are there further commission and staff communications? And then seeing none. Oh, go ahead.
Excuse me, Chair McCray, Harbor Commissioners, I did want to bring up the Parade of Lights. I think we missed that on the last, and I just want to bring you guys up to par. We're scheduled for December 12th. I believe there was a change in the theme since our last communications. The theme will be Magic Under the Moonlight. The parade starts at 5:30 on that day, and we will have fireworks. And we will have snow. We will not have Santa stationed at the City Pier, but he will be making appearances by Harbor Patrol boat. And with that, if there's any questions, that's all I have, except that I would like to thank again Commissioner Sly and Commissioner Sloan. It's been a privilege. Thank you for your service, and wish you both fair winds and following seas.
Thank you very much. Nice comment too. And
Yeah,
looking
thank you.
forward to those fireworks and Christmas celebration. All right, well, I kind of want to be a little leading here. We have one more item, and I would like to hear from our departing commissioners with respect to it. Do we have a motion? We're looking at adjournment.
Yeah, as the last final act, I would like to ask Lang to join me in making the motion to adjourn our last meeting.
I don't think I can do that, but I can second the motion.
We,
It's been moved and seconded, so it, to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Sloan,
yes.
Commissioner Stanowicz,
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kramer,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Sly,
Aye.
and Chair McCray.
Yes. And
All
we are
right,
adjourned.
unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lang and Jim. It's been great.
Farewell, everybody. Good job.
See you.